everybody. So anything that's worth anything
Yeah.
nutritionally, they're
Yeah,
getting
that's true.
rid
Yeah.
of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very
And
true.
Dennis found out that the Bragg's um, vinegar, it's really
Yeah.
nutritious, and Bill Gates bought that company,
Oh boy.
Yeah.
and now
Yeah.
it's gonna be crap.
Yeah. It's gonna change. The recipe of it's gonna change soon.
No, you don't
Oh
dare
yeah,
eat it. If
Yeah.
he's got a hold of it, you don't dare eat it.
Yeah.
that's
But
right.
anyway, shalom everyone on YouTube Live. We're live right now. I hope everyone out there is having a great new moon day. I just want to say Chag Simak Rosh Kadash, which means joyful new moon. I hope everyone's having a great new moon. So, what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be doing a study that I've kind of who has led me to prepare for a while now. We've kind of taken a break from these types of studies, but I think we're going to get back into them today. Is differences in the book of Ezekiel. So we're going to be jumping all around. This is a type of study is going to be hard to follow in a physical Bible. Just to let you guys know, this is going to be kind of hard. I mean, you could do it, but it's just be prepared to jump all around the book of Ezekiel. So this is why I like to have Bible apps on hand. So this is one of the studies that if you do have My Sword on Android, if you do have eSword on iPhone or any of those type of programs, you might want to use this. Viewers and listeners, you might want to use this while you're watching the video. So we're going to start off in Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4, where the Masoretic, by the way, before we jump in here, just to give you guys a synopsis of why these studies are important, why I've been led to do these types of studies, is that most Bibles you have today, okay, are done by using the Masoretic text. As far as the Old Testament of your Bible, doesn't matter what Bible you have, 80 to 90% of the Bibles available primarily use the Masoretic text manuscript for the Old Testament, the Tanakh. There's a problem with that because the guys who created this Masoretic text were anti-Yahusha, to put it lightly. They were similar to the Pharisees. They were very similar in doctrine and theology. So when you come into certain parts of Yahuwah's word that deal with Yahusha, that deal with him either him in pre-incarnate form before he took on flesh in the Tanakh, or messianic prophecies or certain things like that, you'll notice that it's much more vague in your Bibles than if you had a Septuagint in front of you. And just to give a quick summary of what the Septuagint is, the Septuagint was basically, to put it in layman's terms, was the Tanakh of the first century. It was the Bible that everyone used in first century AD. Whether you were of the Pharisees or whether you were of the Nazarenes, everyone used the Septuagint. It wasn't until almost the second century AD that they stopped using the Septuagint. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that the disciples, Yahusha's disciples, were that they were using the Septuagint to convert people, to convert their own brothers and sisters. So what you have to understand is that was really the goal of the rabbis of that time, so-called rabbis of that time, to start creating their own version of the text. So fast forward about 1,000 years, you get the Septuagint. Not the Septuagint, my bad. I'm tripping over my words here. 1,000 years later, from the Septuagint time period, you get the Masoretic text. So the Septuagint was written at the time of the Hellenization period. So roughly around 300 BC, 3rd century BC, and it was written due to the Greeks by the order of, I think the guy's name is Ptolemy Philadelphus was the guy's name. Ptolemy Philadelphus, who was actually the son of Ptolemy, who was one of the four horns mentioned in the book of Daniel that came from King Alexander. Alexander the Great had four generals after him when he died that took over his reign. One of the four generals had a son, Philadelphus. So Ptolemy Philadelphus, the son of Ptolemy the First, who was one of the four horns that came from the he-goat, he commissioned the Septuagint to be written. He went to the legend goes that he went to the Rabbi Eleazar or the high priest Eleazar in the 3rd century BC in Jerusalem, mind you. He went to there, asked them to translate their Paleo-Hebrew scriptures into Greek, and that's what happened. So the reason we call it Septuagint, Latin Septuaginta means 70 in Latin. So again, 70 scribes, Septuagint. And it's rumored that of the 70 scribes, certain numbers of them were from each of the 12 tribes. So that's also part of the legend too. And that they were so meticulous, they checked each other. They went into different rooms when they did this. They checked each other to make sure that nothing funny was going on. So they would have the same manuscript that these guys were copying from and translating from. They would at times they would check during the process just to make sure that they're translating it correctly. So one of the reasons I believe the Septuagint to be so superior is because of the integrity of these 70 scribes from the 3rd century BC versus the Masoretic text, which was written by these Masoretes that, even though their reputation was they were very meticulous, they also had a reputation of being from these Babylonian schools, Talmudic schools in Babylon and in Israel. You can even look it up for yourself in Encyclopedia Britannica. These guys who wrote the Masoretic text were from these Talmudic schools of thought. And so, and it even says that they tried their best, quote unquote, to reproduce the original Hebrew. They did not have the original Hebrew at their time. So even when we kind of, we look at the Strong's Concordance, right, and we say the original Hebrew, technically it's not the original Hebrew. What if we were more accurate to say when we're trying to look into the Hebrew word and what it should be translated as, when we use the Strong's Concordance, we should just say we're looking into the Hebrew, because Masoretic Hebrew is not the original Hebrew. We're not being honest with ourselves when we're saying that. So just wanted to kind of put that all out there. I know that was a lot of information, a condensed version. After we do this study, I'm going to leave some links for our brothers and sisters out there and for anyone out there that wants to research this for themselves. But that's the major issue there. In a nutshell, you have one text that's pro-Yahusha before he even came to earth. The other text is anti-Yahusha after he came, claimed who he was, and ascended. All right, here we go. So Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4. Now, what I'm going to try to do for you guys here, since I have my Bible program here, I'm going to try to, let's see here, click on it. Okay, hold on a second. I think we have a couple of issues here. Let's see here. Go to all apps. Reinstall that again. All right. Let me just see something really quick. So I know there's been an issue with this lately. I don't know what is going on lately? All right, we're going to try this again here. Yeah. If I have to, it is properly inserted. Probably going to have to reinstall some of those programs. All right. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. I can always use eSword here. All right, so bear with me, guys. All right, so here we go. Let's see here. So, all right, if we go to, let's see how I'm gonna have to do this. I think it's parallel view. Oh no. Where is it? Parallel compare. Okay, so we go to compare view here. Huh, why is parallel acting weird right now? Let me see here. Okay, so now let's do Septuagint. I'll just do Bretons, and then for the Masoretic, since a lot of people like to use this, I'll use the Sefer. Okay, here we go. So hopefully everyone can see this on the screen here. So Ezekiel 1 verse 4. Okay. And I looked, behold, and a sweeping and a wind came from the north, and a great cloud on it, and there was brightness round about it, gleaming fire. And the midst of it, as it were the appearance of amber, in the midst of fire and brightness in it. So let me see here. Let me see here. Okay, so what did I have written down as a difference there? Oh, molten bronze. Okay. So interesting. I might have to take that one back because let me see here. Maybe I need to use a different version of LXX here. Hold on a second. Yeah, okay. So the Apostolic Bible Polyglot is where I got that note from. Okay, yeah. So this translation of the Septuagint has also an extra phrase here. It says, and in the midst of it, as it was a vision of molten bronze in the midst of the fire, and the brightness in it. Now, the Masoretic does not have molten bronze, so they leave that out for whatever reason. So that's the first difference there we have is Ezekiel 1:4, the LXX, or a version of the LXX, has molten bronze. Now, here is where we're really going to get into the issues here. And it's hard for you to tell in your English translations because they hide it. If you have all lowercase Lord, that's Adonai. That's not Yahuwah, that's Adonai. So they add, a lot of times the Masoretes will add Adonai there as a name or as a title for the Father. This is why the Jewish people today, they think that it's okay to call who they, think they're worshiping as Adonai or Hashem. It's actually even integrated into their own Masoretic text. So this rabbinical tradition, which is not scriptural, entered into the Masoretic text many times. Either Adonai is put in front of Yahuwah's name as a title added to his name, or sometimes they just remove Yahuwah's name completely. And I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about here. So We're going to go to Ezekiel 2, verse 4, where let me see here. Where's the compare again? All right, parallel. Okay, 2 verse 4. So here's a perfect example here. So the Sefer reads in the Masoretic, "For impudent children, stiff-hearted, I do send you unto them, and you shall say to them, thus says," it has Adonai right here, and then it says Yahuwah. If you have an ISR, it would be translated as master and then Yahuwah. Either way, there's still Adonai there. In the Greek, there is the word master, but I don't think it's equivalent to the Hebrew of Adonai. And many people have said to me, Doug, Adonai is equivalent to Kurios. The problem I have with that is there's no proof of that. There's no proof of that. And the reason I say that is there's no Hebrew text that I know of prior to the Masoretic text. There's no Hebrew source that shows Adonai is even a word in their language, is what I'm trying to say. It would not even exist. So the reality that Kurios in the Greek is equivalent to it, you would have to assume that Adonai existed in 300 BC. It didn't. I mean, as far as I can tell, historically, it didn't. The Dead Sea Scrolls never have Adonai. The Targums never seem to indicate Adonai in the Aramaic. So you have no proof that it even was a word before these Masoretes came around, mind you, 1,000 years later after the Septuagint. So the problem I have with people trying to say the Greek and the equivalent, this Greek word is the equivalent of the Hebrew word, is number one, this Greek text predates it by more than 1,000 years. So how would you even know that this? You would have to blindly accept the modern Babylonian corrupted Hebrew as being the original Hebrew, which is not. So that's my biggest problem for that. There is no proof supporting that. And you could claim I'm making my argument out of silence. I don't care. The fact of the matter is it's not there in the original Hebrew. There's no proof it was there. We're giving the Masoretes way too much credit. Okay? Adonai easily, and actually, if you want to be technical, Adonai in Greek is not Kurios, it's Adonis. Okay? And I'm just going to prove to you guys this because people want to say, oh, Kurios is equivalent to Adonai. I'm going to show you something really quick. This is a link. Okay? Type in Adonis etymology. I'm going to blow your mind right now. This is the equivalent to Adonai. It should not, and this is just something for you guys to understand. If something's a Greek equivalent to a Hebrew, it shouldn't have a completely different phonetic. Like, it should not sound completely from a different word. So what I'm trying to say is, okay, here we go. Adonis says beautiful young man, probably from the French Adonis, from Greek Adonis. Greek to French, same phonetics. Greek to Hebrew, same phonetics. It's not going to be a completely different sounding word. So people that want to say that Adonai is the Hebrew equivalent to Kurios, first of all, Kurios sounds nothing like Adonai, number one. You're completely breaking the rules of transliteration, number one. Okay. Name of the youth beloved by Aphrodite. So why is this important, guys? Because Adonis was Baal. Okay. This is Baal. This is Nimrod. Okay. So when the Hebrews started going astray from Yahuwah, this is who they served. Okay. So FY, for those that don't know this, that's why it's an issue. And that's why I personally believe, and like I said, you could agree to disagree with me. That's fine and dandy. I'm never going to use Adonai when I'm reading scripture. Never going to speak it out loud like when I'm reading scripture. The only reason I spoke it out loud here is to point out that it's being added in there. But when we do our regular scripture readings, I'll never speak out loud, Adonai Yahuwah. I never will do that because I don't believe it's a legitimate word. I think it's been added in. So anyway, so the Greek word there's kurios both times. Now, what the translator does to try to hint that Yahuwah's name should be there, the second time he has kurios translated as Lord in all caps. So this time it's in the original Septuagint, which we don't have today, it would have Yahuwah. So technically it would be kurios and then Yahuwah. And I've actually found video archaeological evidence that the original Septuagint had Yahuwah's name in it. Kurios was a substitution later on. So it would actually say Master Yahuwah is what it would say in the original text. So, and there is actually actual clean Hebrew word for Lord or Master. Brother Yahusha found this the other day. I think it's Geber. I think was the actual Hebrew word for it, which is like it's related to Gabor, which is mighty man or giant. Geber is supposed to be, your ruler, your master, and all that. But anyway, sorry for the long explanation, but this is one of the places where they will put Adonai there. And this is one of the books that they've added it many times. I've actually counted how many times they've added it in this book. 121 times this word is added in the book of Ezekiel. So the next verse we are going to go to is Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 11. So Ezekiel 3:11. So here we go. And here we go. And again, you have the Masoretic text here. It says, and go get you them out of the captivity unto the children of your people and speak unto them and tell them, thus says, you have Adonai right there. And then Yahuwah follows. So this is where in your English translations, it has the all lowercase Lord, and then it has God in all caps. That's what they're hiding. They're hiding basically Adonai and then Yahuwah with the God in all caps. So a lot of the times in your English Bibles, and you can look in the preface if you don't believe me, God in all capitals or Lord in all caps. Those two instances, they're hiding Yahuwah's name. They're hiding YHWH. So for example, like let's see, Mom, can you give me my Bible, your Bible for a second? Mm-hmm. So where are we at here? Verse 11, right?
Yeah.
See that? Right here.
3:11. Okay.
See how it has?
Go to the.
See right here. Right here where my finger is.
That's a capital L, though, right?
No, it's a capital L. It's a small capital with the rest lowercase. See how it's like that? Yeah. That's Adonai.
Oh, I see. All right.
God all capital, YHWH. You'll see this in every English Bible. Most English Bibles do this tradition. They tell you in the preface too. They tell you in the introduction of the Bible, this is what we're doing. Or in the NLT and other very paraphrased Bibles, they'll put Adonai as sovereign. So like it will say sovereign, then all caps Lord. That's what they're hiding, okay? So when we go to the Septuagint here, and let me just pick an easier version of Septuagint to read, because sometimes they try to make it match the Hebrews way of a verse reads, and then it gets confusing because they'll have it like right to left or whatever, or left to right. And go your way, go into the captivity to the children of your people, and you shall speak to them. Say to them, thus says Yahuwah, whether they will hear or whether they will forbear. Another thing I noticed too, guys, is that depending on the version of the Septuagint, it doesn't even have master in front. So depending on what Septuagint you're looking at, like the Bretons, it will only have one kurios. Only one. So that to me would even prove more that something has happened in between the original Septuagint and the Masoretic text. Why there's only one kurios? Because people will say, well, it's just master. Well, then why is there certain versions of the Septuagint that only have kurios there one time in the verse, which means that it would just say, thus says Yahuwah, not master Yahuwah. So to me, that's a little fishy that the Masoretic has Adonai added in all these places where it's not even warranted to even say, hypothetically speaking, to even need master in front of Yahuwah. So to me, it's very skeptical at the least. So now we're at Ezekiel 3:15. Let's see here. So Masoretic text says astonished, LXX says conversant. Now, this is an interesting difference. You have it's saying conversant in this verse versus astonished. So it makes it read a little different here with the different wording. So to the left here, where we have the Sefer for the Masoretic, it says, then I came to them out of the captivity at Tel Aviv. Now, this is another interesting thing here is the Septuagint doesn't even have the word Tel Aviv there. So to me, that's
Tel Aviv. Yeah.
Yeah, Aviv, Beeb. Yeah, it's
very close, isn't it?
It actually is the same thing, Mom. It's just that
Is it?
The Babylonian Hebrew changes the B to a V. So
Interesting.
It's really the same word. It's just a different pronunciation, quote unquote. So really, it's the same thing. That's why the Sefer has a Viv. It's the same thing. It's not any difference. So, but it's weird how the Masoretic adds that city in there where the Septuagint doesn't mention it at all. It just says, Septuagint says, then I passed through the air and came into the captivity and went round to them that dwelt in the river of Kobar, who were there, and I sat there 7 days, conversing in the midst of them. So there's actually a couple differences here. Septuagint says conversant. The Masoretic of Ezekiel says astonished, and the Masoretic of Ezekiel decided to use the word at Tel Aviv rather than at the river of Kobar. Now, we could look up probably geographically to see if is the river Kobar in Tel Aviv, because if it is, then there's not an issue. But if it's not in Tel Aviv, then you have the Masoretes geographically changing this prophecy here, or this vision where he saw the vision. It is the river. All right, so okay. It seems like it is. Okay. So that's not a huge variant then. That's just difference in the Septuagint giving you where in Tel Aviv. It's being a little bit more specific where in Tel Aviv that Ezekiel went to. He went to the river of Kedar. So it's giving you at least a little bit more specific geographical location. But I think the bigger issue here, like I said, is conversant means that you're conversing, you're talking to them. The Masoretic says that he was astonished among them, so meaning that he would have not talked to them. He was astonished, he was astounded. So there's a weird difference in wording there. There's a really weird difference in wording there. So, for whatever reason. So Ezekiel 3:27. Again, we're going back to the Adonai thing again, guys. So I think what I'll do is I'll use the Brenton's or the Alexandria Bible to show you how it definitely seems like it's being added in there. And obviously, and another thing I want to say, because people were saying, well, Doug, it was in that ABP you were using. Yes. What you guys got to understand is there is multiple families within the quote unquote, there's multiple manuscript families within the Septuagint. The Septuagint is just not one manuscript, okay? You got three main manuscripts everyone talks about. You got the Codex Alexandrinus, you have the Codex Vaticanus from the Vatican, and the Sinaiticus. All three are sources for the LXX today. So sometimes the LXX, among the manuscript families, certain versions of the LXX will differ slightly. Not by a lot, but they'll differ slightly. So just to keep your eye on that. And that could have been why people were afraid to trust in the Septuagint. But to me, overall, it doesn't matter which manuscript family you talk about, any of those three are more legitimate than the Masoretic text anyway. So to me, it doesn't really matter. So let's see here. So Ezekiel 3:27, we're going to go to next. So verse 27 here. We'll see how much time we have. I think we might be able to at least get down to chapter 10 for today. Okay. So verse 27 says, but when I speak with you, I will open your mouth and I will say unto them, thus says Adonai Yahuwah. Here you go, Adonai again. He that hears, let him hear, and he that forbears, let him forbear, for they are rebellious people. Okay, and as you can see here, let me see if I can try to help you guys out. Try to zoom in here. That's the only thing I don't like about eSword is it's really hard to zoom in. I used to have the magnifying glass right here. Yeah, I really don't like that. Anyway, so if you look at the Septuagint side, it says, but when I speak to you, I will open my mouth, and you shall say to them, thus says Yahuwah. He that hears, let him hear. And he that is disobedient, let him be disobedient, because it is a provoking house. So those that just joined, again, there's only one kurios there. Even translated into English, you only have LORD once. So people that want to say that it's just the Hebrew of kurios, then why is LORD only there once? So that is my point there, that words are being added to the text, okay? So there's only one kurios in the Greek. And obviously we know kurios many times, even in the New Testament, it shows that kurios was not just a word that meant master. Kurios in the Greek was being used to that tradition of hiding Yahuwah's name was being carried over. And so eventually what happened was kurios became a substitution for the Father's name many times. So obviously when it's talking about the Father here in context, obviously Yahuwah is supposed to be right there. So anyway, so just to explain what I'm trying to show you guys here. So, and I know people will say, well, Doug, the Lord is lowercase. I'm like, okay, well, all you have to do is go to another translation, okay? It's all uppercase here. So, and again, now in this version of the Septuagint, it does have two kurioses. It has one lowercase one and then all caps for the second one. So in this manuscript family, it would say Master Yahuwah. But again, even when the Septuagint does show that it's Master Yahuwah, there is no proof, like I said, that people can point to that Kurios equals Adonai. There is not one source you can point to at all. And like I showed you guys, etymologically, in Greek, Adonai would be Adonis, not Kurios. It's not the same word. You can't, like I said, this is the basics, guys, basics in transliteration and phonetics, okay? If it's the same word, it has to sound the same. Just like names. It can't sound completely different and be the same word. You know what I'm saying, Mom? It can't be like Doug is not Brian.
Yeah.
Not the same thing. You can't claim it's the same thing. You just like names, you can't claim two different words are the same thing. I'll give you another example. Elohim or Elohim in English is not God. They don't sound the same. They're not the same word. They're not the same. So, we got to unlearn this whole false transliteration nonsense. If it doesn't transliterate with the same sound and the same letters, it is not the same word. It's impossible. Okay, and anyone that's interested, I'll give you guys the links about Adonis and the Adonis Adonai thing. Okay, so but I'm just trying to show you guys something there. So again, moving on. Ezekiel 4:14, Masoretic text adds Adonai. So again, the Masoretic text is adding Adonai. Okay, so Ezekiel 4:14 we're at here, guys. So Ezekiel 4:14. What the heck? Okay. Go back here, Ezekiel 4:14. We're going to go back to the compare view. I don't know why the live stream keeps doing that. Wonder if there's an issue with the live stream or what is going on. Okay. It's very strange. Anyway, hopefully it stops doing that. Anyone on the live, please let me know if our live is not working so I can do what I need to do here, guys. I don't know why this is doing this. All right. Hold on a second. I'm going to, you know what? Let me just try something. I might record to the cloud here while this live stream's going, just in case, because it's making it very hard for me to use the Bible app in the background. So let me just see here. All right. So as we were going on here, and I apologize to everyone on YouTube here, but I had to start using this cloud recording here because the stupid preparing live stream thing keeps saying prepare. I don't know why it's saying that. I'm wondering if we already used up all your hotspot, Mom. I wonder if that's what's going on. Cause it's acting very weird. So what I think, let me see here. So let me just try to, yes. All right, so we got some technical difficulties here, guys. What I'm gonna have to do is I'll just provide the doc and we'll just be reading on one of my other devices. I'll just use my phone here for the Bible app because it is screwing up right now really badly for no reason. Let's just see here. All right, come on. All right, so we're gonna be going to, let's see, where are we at? All right, so we're at, I think we just did 4:14, right, Mom?
That's right. Yep.
All right, so we're at 5:15. I mean 5:5, my bad. So chapter 5, verse 5 here. Let's see here. So chapter 5, verse 5. Okay. Thus says Yahuwah, this is Jerusalem. I have set her in her countries round about her in the midst of the nations. So that's LXX 2012. So a modern Septuagint translation reads it as, thus says Yahuwah, this is Jerusalem. I have set her in her countries surrounding her in the midst of the nations. Now, if you go to a Masoretic based, it will say, thus says Adonai Yahuwah, this is Jerusalem, which I've set in the midst of the Gentiles, which the other lands, my bad, not which, with the other lands all around her. So that's Ezekiel 5:5 there. And again, the Masoretic text has Adonai in front of Yahuwah there. In your ISRs, it reads as Master Yahuwah, but the word master there is actually Adonai in the Hebrew. Okay, so just showing that again. So, all right, we're going to kind of move on here, going to Ezekiel 6:3 and 11. And you shall say, O mountains of Yasharel, hear the word of, again, with the Masoretic, you have Adonai and then Yahuwah. Thus says, and then it has it again, Adonai, Yahuwah, to the mountains, to the hills, to the ravines, to the valleys, look, I myself am bringing a sword against you, and I shall destroy your high places. So again, we have Adonai actually being added twice in Ezekiel 6:3. Now in the Septuagint, it just says, and you shall say, you mountains of Yasharel, hear the word of Yahuwah. Thus says Yahuwah to the mountains and to the hills and to the valleys and to the forests, behold, I bring a sword upon you, and your high places shall be utterly destroyed. Now let's drop down to thus says Yahuwah, clap with your hands and stamp with your foot and say, aha, aha, for all the abominations of the house of Yasharal, they shall fall by the sword and by pestilence and by famine. Okay. So here we go. Now, if you go to the Masoretic version again, it will say, thus says Adonai, then Yahuwah, strike with your hand and stamp your feet and say, Alas, because of all the evil abominations of the house of Yasharel, who shall fall by sword, by scarcity of food, and by pestilence. So again, you have multiple times this is happening. The next one we have here is Ezekiel 7:1. All right, let's see here. So here we go. We have, and the word of Yahuwah came to me saying, I think I might have messed up with the verse numberings here. Okay. No, it's actually verse 2 we're looking at. And you, son of man, this is what Adonai Yahuwah said to the land of Yasharal, and the end has come upon the four corners of the land. Okay. Now, if we go to the Septuagint in the same verse, it says, thus says Yahuwah, an end is come to the land of Yasharal, and the end is come on the four corners of the land. So again, you have no Adonai there in the Septuagint. So, all right. Ezekiel 7, verse 5. Now I will pour out my anger upon you near at hand, and I will accomplish my wrath on you. I will rightly rule you for your ways and repay upon you all your abominations. This is interesting. So the LXX has it as I. I wonder why I had this. Oh, that can't be. Oh, that's why I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay. My bad. Okay. Actually, I wanted to look at the next chapter here. Let's see here. 8 verse 4. So Ezekiel 8 verse 4. And see, the esteem of the Elua of Yashrel was there, like the vision that I saw in the plain. That's how the Masoretic reads. Okay. LXX. And behold, the esteem of Yahuwah, Elu of Yashrel, was there according to the vision which I saw in the plain. So now we have a more obvious issue here. Yahuwah's name is just taken out. All you have is Elohim. There's no. So, and just to show you guys what I'm talking about here, let's go to 8 verse 4 here, just to show you what I'm talking about. Okay. You can easily show this in here. All right. So, and behold, was there the esteem, right, of Kurios, Theos, of Yasharal. So again, in the Greek here, where you have Kurios, which is substituted or translated, I should say, as all caps Lord, then you have Theos, which is substituted with capital G, lowercase od. When those two are together, obviously we know we put 2 and 2 together here. When we see those substitutions there, it's Yahuwah Elohim or Yahuwah Elua of Yashrel or Elohim of Yashrel. So what the Masoretic has done here, they completely take Yahuwah's name out of the text. They don't even substitute it. They just omit it. It gets completely thrown out in Ezekiel 8:4. And you can see it in every version. In every version of the Masoretic, whether you got the ISR, Hallelujah Scriptures, all of them in this verse will just say the Elohim of Yasharal. They completely leave Yahuwah's name out of the verse. So, yeah. All right. So, let's go back to the document here. All right. Now, I think what we'll do is we'll end at chapter 16 for today. So we got a couple more bullet points, but I think 16 will end for time constraints, and just I want to make sure this live stream actually went through before we go too far into this document. So, all right, let's see here. Ezekiel 9:2. 9:2. LXX says, and behold, 6 men came from the way of the high state that looks toward the north. Each one's axe was in his hand. There was one man in the midst of them, clothed with a long robe down to the feet, and a sapphire girdle was on his loins. And they came in and stood near the brazen altar. Now, this is interesting because sapphire
Not in the Masoretic.
is not in the Masoretic, and people might be saying, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is sapphire is the color of the tablets of stone. Sapphire is pretty much the color that represents his law. I think it was a way for them to, because many commentators, when looking through the book of Ezekiel, will outright mention the vision of who he saw on the throne was Messiah pre-incarnate. Almost every commentator says that. So if every commentator knows that, I'm pretty sure the Masoretes knew that, and they're trying to take away any hint that this person sitting on the throne above, above the cherubs and everything is Yahusha. They would not want people to know that. So taking away sapphire, the word sapphire from there, it makes it more enigmatic. It makes it more generalized. It's just someone with a linen girdle. But we know that the color of the law is blue. Sapphires are blue, certain types of sapphire. There were sapphire stones given to Masha from under Yahuwah's feet. Yahuwah carved sapphire tablets to give him to write the law on. Okay, there's a symbolicness to the sapphire spiritually, so that could be why they wanted to take it out. But yeah, sapphire's not in Ezekiel 9 verse 2 of the Masoretic. Okay, and again, we go back to Ezekiel 9 verse 8, so we're staying in the same chapter, verse 8. And it came to pass as they were striking, I fell upon my face and cried and said, Alas, O Yahuwah, will you destroy the remnant of Yasharel in pouring out your wrath upon Jerusalem? And this is, I think, one of the instances where they just outright substitute Yahuwah's name for Adonai here, if I'm not mistaken. So let me just see here. Sefer 9, verse 8. Oh, no. Okay, so it's Adonai Yahuwah they have here. And it came to pass, they were saying to them, I was left, and I fell upon my face and cried and said, Adonai Yahuwah, will you destroy all the remnant of Yasharel and pouring out your fury upon Jerusalem? Now, this is kind of controversial, too. I know a lot of people will say that this is a positive thing because they have the Aleph Tav interjected into so many of these verses. The problem is that these rabbis that put that into the text, they were not trying to point out Yahusha in there. That was not their goal. Their goal, and I found this out recently, the reason why they have like Aleph Tav almost in every verse half of the time is because they were trying to basically indicate where you're supposed to pause. Mm. It has nothing to do with Yahusha. So a lot of people will say, oh, it's cool, we got the Aleph Tav in the middle of these verses and stuff like that. That really wasn't their intent. These Masoretes could care less about pointing him out as the Aleph Tav. What they cared about is that they were actually adding to the text to tell the reader where to stop in between sentences, basically, or separate thoughts. So basically adding to Yahuwah's word. The only time we see that we're supposed to take breaks or like pause is in the Psalms. We don't see that really indicated in the actual like other books of the scriptures. We don't really see that. So that's just what I've actually researched and found out. All right, so we're going to go to chapter 10, verse 9. And I saw and behold, 4 wheels stood by the cherubs, 1 wheel by each cherub, and the appearance of the wheels was as appearance of carbuncle stone. So this is where it gets weird because both in the Hebrew and the Greek, it's very hard to figure out what type of stone is being mentioned, especially in the Hebrew. The Hebrew word here can either mean beryl or topaz. The LXX of this verse says carbuncle, and when you look into the Greek, it's not exactly carbuncle. It just means a burning coal in the Greek. So the translators did their best to try to figure out what stone it's being talked about. It's very hard, really, either way. That's more of a subtle difference, minor difference there, not a huge big deal.
What's interesting, there are many varieties of beryl. There's a pale pink,
Yeah.
there's a green, there's a gold.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very interesting.
What we do know, though, is Scripture talks about burning coals, in heaven and stuff like that. We see that a lot. Even in the book of Isaiah, you see the burning coals in the vision. So that we know is up there near his throne. As far as what type of stone, that's all debatable on what type of stone it could have been. That's really, the text doesn't express that. So that's where it gets confusing. Ezekiel 10:14. Unfortunately, the LXX does not have this verse. It has been omitted in our modern copies of the LXX. So that's 1 point for the Masoretic there. Probably because we have a copy of a copy of a copy at this point. So there are going to be verses that are either fragmented or just missing at some point. So anyway, chapter 10, not chapter 10, chapter 11, verse 7, we have Adonai again being added in. So the LXX would say, therefore, thus says Yahuwah, your dead whom you have struck in the midst of it, these are the flesh, and it is the cauldron, but I will bring you forth out of the midst of it. So the LXX just indicates Yahuwah. It only has kurios one time, so it would indicate that Yahuwah is supposed to be there. The Masoretic would say, therefore, thus says Adonai Yahuwah, your slain whom you have laid. In the midst of it, they are the flesh, and this city is the cauldron, but I will bring you forth out of the midst of it. Okay, so all right. So let's go to the next verse here. Verse 8. Let's see here. You have feared the sword, and I will bring a sword upon you, says Adonai Yahuwah. So again, the Masoretic text in the next verse as well adds Adonai. Okay. Then when you go to the LXX, you fear the sword, and I will bring a sword upon you, says Yahuwah. So, all right. Now we're looking at verses 11 and 12. And it came to pass while I was prophesying that Phaltius, son of Benaias, died, and I fell upon my face. And cried with a loud voice and said, Alas, alas, O Yahuwah, you will utterly destroy the remnant of Yasharal. So again, the Septuagint just has Yahuwah. This city shall be your cauldron, neither shall you be the flesh in the midst of thereof. Okay, so that's weird. Yeah, I think I got the wrong verses here. There's no Adonai in 11 or 12. Okay, so never mind. I'll just have to take that off. All right, moving on, verse 17. Here we go. Therefore, thus says, you have Adonai, then Yahuwah. I will even gather you from the people, assemble you out of the countries where you have been scattered. I will give you the land of Yasharal. So there we go. Okay. All right. So that was 11, verse 17. Okay, I could have swore we just did 7 and 8. Okay, yeah, 17. All right. So right there, verse 17, we have Adonai. You go to the Septuagint, it would read as, therefore say you, thus says Yahuwah, I will also take them from the heathen, and I will gather them out of the lands wherein I have scattered them, and I will give them the land of Yashar'al. Okay. All right. Verse 21. And as the heart is set upon their abominations, their lawlessnesses, and their lawlessnesses, as their heart went after them, I have repaid their ways. I have repaid their ways on their heads, says Yahuwah. Okay, so that's the LXX version. Masoretic version says, but as for them whose heart walks after the heart of their own detestable things, I will repay their way upon their own heads, says, and then it has Adonai and then Yahuwah, obviously. So that is Ezekiel 11:21. So again, Adonai is added. We got two more cross references for today, and I think that will be it. Let's see here. Ezekiel 16:3. And say, so here's the Masoretic, and say, thus says, you have the Adonai there, then Yahuwah, until Jerusalem, your birth and your nativity is of the land of Canaan. Your father was an Amorite and your mother was a Hittite. Obviously, Yahuwah is speaking of allegorical terms there. Now, if you look at the Septuagint version, it just says, you shall say, thus says Yahuwah to Jerusalem, your root and your birth are of the land of Canaan. Your father was an Amorite and your mother was a Hittite. And then if we drop down to verse 8 here, and I passed by you and saw you, behold, it was your time and time of resting, and I spread my wings over you. Notice how it says time of resting. It does not, I think there's a difference there too. I think the Masoretic says like your time of love or whatever. I spread my wings over you and covered your shame and swear to you, I entered into a covenant with you, says Yahuwah, you became mine. So we're going to see here. So in verse 8 it says, I passed along upon you and saw that your time was the time of love. So that's another difference there. You have time of resting versus time of love. Now, now obviously the Masoretic gives the idea more of that it's talking about Yahuwah courting her, or I just kind of find it interesting. So you also have Adonai added there as well. Says, I swore an oath to you, entered into a covenant with you, you became mine, declares Adonai, then Yahuwah. So the Masoretic, what it really changes here is it doesn't just add Adonai, it also seems to change the word resting to love, because I don't think that can mean the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Unless the Septuagint translators are trying to relate that the time of love or anything could be allegor to, the millennium. I could see that, like that the wedding feast would happen around the time of the millennium and the 1,000-year rest, maybe. But prophetically, it could be the same thing, but literally, it can't be the same thing. Resting is resting physically. Love is love. Even carnal love is just carnal love physically. So you can't.
There's different words in Hebrew for those two.
Yeah. So even in Hebrew, you have two different words for that. So it seems like the Masoretes changed the actual word that was there, and they changed it and made it a different word for whatever reason. So anyway, so that's pretty much it for today's part 1 study. Mainly because, guys, I want to make sure that this recording went through correctly, because I kept seeing on this taskbar here, preparing live. So I want to make sure that it went through all the way. So if it didn't, what I can at least do, guys, is I did have this cloud recording going along with the live stream about halfway through. So at least worst case scenario, if we have to, we'll be able to salvage at least, a good 50 to 60% of the recording that already was recorded. So please stay tuned, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in and bearing with us. And to all of our brothers and sisters out there, have a great new moon. Have a great new month in Yahuwah and Yahusha. And have a great Sabbath coming up. Shabbat Shalom.